Hello, Puny Podians. This is current day Ryan, or maybe slightly past Ryan, depending on when you're listening to this, what episode it's on the front of. Anyway, David and I have decided that we wanted to share with you some of our favorite content that we make, our super secret spoiler show. These episodes are typically released via the Ears Up Patreon. However, we figured we're past the Infinity Saga, we might as well grab some of those Pym particles, run through the quantum realm, and release these super fun episodes from the past. A few notes before the episode starts. First, we don't have a language filter in these episodes, so Cap, cover your ears. Secondly, as the name implies, these have spoilers for everything up to and including any current releases at the time of recording. One last note, these were recorded about 2 years ago, and they undergo very, very little editing. In fact, the sound quality will kind of be what it is, and you'll kind of hear it change over time as I learn and change. Also, things we say might be a little bit out of date. We don't have Doctor Strange's time stone to be able to go back in time and correct ourselves and know the future. Anyway, I hope that you guys all enjoy this nonsense. And if you want to get these less than 2 years from when we record them, go join the Ears Up Patreon. The link is in the show notes as always. Enjoy the episode.
Thanks for visiting the TVA.
Well, it's a super secret after show. The super secret after show. It's after secret.
I'm gonna sample that, and that's gonna be the secret show now.
Jesus Christ!
You're welcome.
Oh God!
All right, here we go. Let's get going.
Well, it's a super secret after show. The super secret after show. It's after secret.
All right, all. Thank you for joining us here on our super secret spoiler show on the Ears Up Patreon. As a reminder, this is the super secret spoiler show for The Incredible Hulk. For those of you who listen to the Iron Man super secret spoiler show, we recorded that about 2 weeks after recording the episode. We are recording The Incredible Hulk about 14 minutes after recording the main show. So, David, you still doing good over there?
I'm doing okay. I need a drink though. Hold on.
Fair enough. Nice.
All right.
Nice grab. All right, David. Well, as is usual with our super secret spoiler show, my first question for you, my friend, is what are you drinking?
I am drinking a 394 Pale Ale by AleSmith. It is a San Diego-based brewery, and as I just discovered 2 minutes ago, it is a joint collaboration with Tony Gwynn, who was the last baseball player to seriously flirt with the 400 batting average for a season. And it is... Oh, it's very good.
Nice.
Crisp, hoppy, little... it's delicious. It's pale ale. Yummy.
That's awesome.
What are you drinking?
That is awesome. Well, as continuing my tradition of finding things that are themed to the movie we're drinking or we watched, I am drinking Hop Troll Strata from Odd 13, which is here in Broomfield, Colorado. Now, at first glance, you might be like, why is that themed to the movie? Well, this beer is actually a smash. So single malt, single hop. It's actually a hazy IPA using that smash style, which is kind of cool. But Hulk smash. Figured I had to find a smash for this one. So let's give it a shot.
It's a good call.
That's good. I like the smashes. You really get the characteristic of the single malt and the single hop that they are using, and so you get a lot of citrus notes on this one. Real good. Real good. All right. Well, before I forget it, and because we're drinking, I want to make sure that I get this out first. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this show. If you are hearing this show, it means you are supporting the network, which means you are supporting us. and we do truly, 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 truly appreciate that support. So if you are listening to this show and you have no idea who the hell is talking to you right now, we are Puny Pod. This is released in a mixed feed with the Ears Up podcast secret show, as well as the Supreme Resort After Hours. We are Puny Pod. We rewatch a MCU movie every month and tear it down in 2-hour long episodes. So basically, this month we watched the Incredible Hulk so that you didn't have to. And during our main show, we try not to spoil what like how that movie connects to movies we haven't watched yet. But here in the super secret spoiler show, spoilers are on the table, and so are cuss words. So if you are watching, if you're listening with your kids, earmuffs. But yeah, David, I guess, you want to do the spoilers connections to the other movies first, or do you want to do our ongoing segments first?
That's a good question. I want to the couple things I want to talk about in the movie, and then we can kind of get into the segments as well. There, I think more so than Iron Man, this movie offered a lot in terms of connections to other films, and so I'm kind of it was really tough to, like, when we're going through the movie, because the movie itself is not fantastic, but there are a lot of different, like, kernels that are kind of dropped throughout. So do you want to talk about the spoiler stuff, or do you want to talk more about, like, general themes, feelings on the movie that we didn't get into during the normal show?
Let's talk about, you know what, let's wrap up anything that we left out of the normal show that would have normally gone in the normal show, and then we can get on with the spoiler stuff.
All right. One thing we alluded to on the main feed is Edward Norton, and how he was eventually not recast as Bruce Banner, Incredible Hulk. So I guess there were a couple things. I did a little research on this, and it looks like there were kind of principally things that were going on that Marvel eventually kind of squashed later on. So first, it was Edward Norton as the screenwriter. So Edward Norton claims that he agreed to star in the movie on the proviso that he be allowed to write the script. He wanted to rewrite the script himself to bring the film closer aligned to the comics, which he was a big fan of. So, and I saw a separate interview where he was talking about how he was in American History X, and Fincher had presented him the script, and he provided some feedback and how it went to a different direction. And so I get the sense that, like, this is something that Edward Norton was now like, oh, hey, and now I'm a screenwriter as well as an actor. And according to Tim Roth, Norton rewrote scenes every day. However, he was only able to change the dialogue and develop certain characters because much of the film had already been prepared. And so Marvel submitted both Norton and Zach Penn's draft to the Writers Guild of America, which awarded Penn sole credit after reading his plea. The WGA basically favored Penn's original plot structure and characters over Norton's, like, minor dialogue changes. In addition to rewrites, he directed himself in some of his own scenes, such as the campus scenes, in order to save time while Leterrier worked with the second unit. So it sounds like Edward Norton, fantastic actor, but a bit of a control freak. But then after the release of the film, then it kind of came out that this guy was a pain in the ass to deal with. The director Louis, as I will call him, admitted that there had been several disagreements between Norton and the filmmakers. In 2010, shortly before announcing the Avengers at San Diego Comic-Con, Kevin Feige released a statement clarifying Norton was let go. Quote, "Our decision is definitely not based on monetary factors, but instead rooted in the need for an actor who embodies the creativity and collaborative spirit of our other talented cast members." That is the biggest fuck you will ever hear from a Marvel executive.
Yeah, that's brutal.
In response, Norton's agent said in a statement that Feige initially wanted the actor to continue playing the Hulk, and the decision to let him go, quote, seemed to us to be a financial decision. He called Feige's comments, quote, mean-spirited, unprofessional, disingenuous, and clearly defamatory. In 2018, now this is 10 years after the film was released. You'd think like
Jeez.
at that point in time, you don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah, you just drop it.
And Norton said he is quoted as saying, quote, I can't remember what he was on some podcast said, quote, I did a big action movie called The Incredible Hulk. You know what went wrong? It needed a better script. I thought maybe we should try to make one Marvel movie that was at least as good as at least as good as the worst Christopher Nolan movie. But what the hell was I thinking?
Oh.
End quote. Edward Norton, thanks for showing up for the MCU.
Yeah. That's brutal, man. And that's funny, because we talked a little bit about that in the 0th episode about how like the MCU is not the Chris Nolan movies. Like it is not. And for those who don't know, the Chris Nolan movies are like Dark Knight Rises, those movies. And that's just not what the MCU is about. Not what they were, especially then. I mean, you can argue that by the Eternals, you're getting closer to that with having like Chloe Zhao do the directing and a more serious tone and that sort of thing. But wow, that's brutal.
I really like Edward Norton a lot as an actor, but he just sounds like a complete. I can't say complete nightmare because I think he is good. He's probably a perfectionist. He is not Nicolas Cage or some other actors who you get the sense are just legitimately maniacs. But yeah, dude is not happy about his appearance in the Hulk, like at all. So that was one of the things I noted. In the movie itself, let's talk about. We didn't talk about what is probably like an unspoken actor in the movie, or unspoken part of the cast, and that is the CGI department.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what are your thoughts on the CGI in this movie overall, given that it was made in like 2007, so like 15, 16 years ago?
You know, I think especially given the time frame, it holds up actually incredibly well. Is it the best CGI ever? No, there's definitely some pieces that are dated, and like I talked about in the main show, that scene on the table, that scene where we're experimenting on Banner and testing out his or testing out the cure, that's horrible. Like it is legitimately bad. It's not just bad for the MCU or bad for a good movie. It's legitimately bad. It reminded me a lot of the CGI in the X-Men. I think it was the first X-Men movie where the Senator turns into water.
It reminded me of like a video game where you see where like it glitches up at a particular point and you walk through a wall.
Yeah, exactly. And but overall, I mean, as slow and as clunky as that last fight was, the CGI in it actually wasn't bad. And that first fight, the CGI was legitimately good in that the first attack through the Pingo Doce factory, that was actually legitimately good. Like, yeah.
The other thing which I noticed on my final rewatch, and when I say final rewatch, I mean I'm not going to watch this film again. I take that back. I probably, if there might be a circumstance, like if I just want to like watch all the Hulk content together, but when you watch it again, look at the CGI they do on Tim Roth when he is shirtless.
Yeah.
at the very after he gets each dose, they CGI like some abs on him and add more muscle sinew. Cracked me up when I saw that today. Like the very end, like I've noticed like on Instagram there will be all these like videos of people who've gotten actual like six packs tattooed onto their body, and I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing? And that reminded me of it. So
That's fair. Yeah, and I will say that's the other thing I noticed. The Hulk has nipples, and the Abomination does not. So
let's talk about well. Let's talk about Abomination and Hulk, and this will relate a little bit back to the comic book. I did want to like when you're going through when Blonsky's now getting his third dose of stuff and he's threatening Stearns, and he's like, hey, I want some of that stuff. You just reminded me of like someone who's on a bender who's just like, I will drink anything. I just need a drink. And that's what it reminded me of. This guy just like, sure, whatever. You want to put like, frog milk in me? Sure, whatever. Like, does not care.
Whatever gets me the dragon.
So Abomination Hulk, I did not know this from before. I did not read the Hulk standalone Hulk comic books too much. Read some of the stuff that John Byrne did. Never read Abomination. I guess the differences between the Hulk and Abomination, the Abomination has this like steady level of strength, whereas the Hulk, it will exceed, it will grow above and beyond. So in the scene in the fight, because if the Abomination also has, at least historically, the intelligence and memory of Blonsky, and the Hulk Banner. We don't know, at least in this movie, like how much of Banner's like cunning and intellect is apparent for the Hulk, or whether he is just a crazy out of control rage monster. Right. We know he recognizes Betty, and so there's some Banner in there, but I don't think Banner's using the same level of intellect. But I thought that was interesting because if Abomination had both gamma rays and Bruce's blood, and he's stronger, then in theory, there's no way for the Hulk to win, right? So I guess that was the thing when he rages up and he goes above and beyond, and then chokes him out with the invincible chain, which is ridiculous. But
I guess that makes sense why. This cracked me up during the like watching it. The scale of the Hulk is totally inconsistent in this movie.
Yes.
The size of the Hulk is it's always different, and I guess maybe that's part of his power growing and shrinking, or maybe that's just me being nice to the CGI department and they just didn't know how to properly do scale at the time. But yeah, it's constantly changing, and so that, I guess, like retroactively, and maybe we're giving credit where it's not due, but it makes sense that he'd get bigger if he's more powerful, smaller if he's less powerful. So.
I think they sorted it out by the later films. By the time they got to Mark Ruffalo playing the Hulk, because I agree with you. There were certain points in time where I just had to let certain things go, and the Hulk's varying heights and dimensions. I'm like, I'm just not gonna trip over it. It doesn't make any sense, right? I would say he probably, at various points in time, what do you think is shortest? What do you think is the shortest Hulk that we see in the film? Like fully transformed Hulk. Obviously, when he's in the chair, he's 8 feet, 9 feet tall, and then up to like 15. I don't know.
I want to say it was in the cave where he's only like a head taller than Liv Tyler.
That's right.
And I don't think she's that tall. Let's see. How tall is Liv Tyler?
She used to be a model, so I imagine she's not short. So I'd say probably at least 5.5 feet.
Yeah, 5'10".
Okay,
so
that's about right.
Throw another foot on top of that, about 6'10", almost 7 feet, probably at his tallest or his shortest, I would say.
Okay, so like Randy Johnson height. I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he definitely needs to be a little bigger.
Let's talk a little bit. All the connections. I'm sure you probably counted a bunch of stuff. I spotted connections to at least 5 different properties. So it was Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Avengers, and Thor. So let's talk about, I think the most groundwork they laid was for Captain America.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
We've got the cryosync chamber, which has the the serum. It's got the Stark Industries label. You recognize the name that was on the thing on the container. It was Dr. Reisenstein?
I think it's Einstein with an R at the front, but yeah, it's like it's Reinstein, something like that. But
Okay.
it's Abraham Erskine.
Erskine, yeah.
Yeah, it's his pseudonym.
Okay, yeah, I thought so. I thought that was that was maybe that should have been my favorite scene. Maybe even that like that's so sad. Yeah, so you've got the person who, while employed World War II, created the super soldier serum, which was used to create the Red Skull. Didn't work too well. Created Steve Rogers, worked pretty well. Created Blonsky, worked pretty well.
Yeah.
It worked well. Like it succeeded.
Yeah, it did what it was supposed to.
It did what it was supposed to. And it was also used, we saw in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yep.
Right?
Used on a few people.
Yep. But so I thought that was, it's one of the interesting connections between all these different films. I like that part. I got a little confused as to how we got to the Abomination, but we cleared that up in terms of getting both the Gamma Blood and the serum.
Yeah, it's the mix. It's the I don't know what's in you already, but when we mix it, it might become an abomination.
Hated that line. That's one of my. I'm making a note to myself that I'm going to separately keep a list of my least favorite lines, and that is on the list. That's going to be on there for a while. But
that's at the end, and then the other Captain America one. So yeah, Super Soldier Serum, which in the comics, Super Soldier Serum is such a through line, right? Super Soldier Serum is like a very frequent piece of a story. It's somebody's looking for Super Soldier Serum. Someone's recreated it. Someone's done this, that, or the other with Super Soldier Serum, and the MCU hasn't done it that much so far. I think that's one of the cool things about Falcon and Winter Soldier was like it really did kind of go down that like rabbit hole of Super Soldier Serum, and you got a little bit of it through like Red Guardian in Black Widow, and you get a little bit of it through the other Winter Soldiers,
Isaiah Bradley, the 5 Russian ones that like got all mutated and messed up and eventually murdered.
Yeah. So it was cool to see it. Yep, Bucky, right. So it was cool to see it there, but the other Captain America tie-in actually comes from a deleted scene, which this deleted scene, and we'll talk about how it plays into the Avengers, is the
you talk about the opening alternate beginning?
The alternate opening. We get to see the scene, and actually I'll borrow from our segment on where it ties into the Avengers. We get to see the scene where in the Avengers, Banner says, in case you need to kill me, he's talking about the cell he's in, like, this might be able to kill me. He's like, I know you can't kill me. I tried. I got low. I didn't see an end, so I put a bullet in my mouth, and the other guy spit it out. So I moved on. I focused on helping people. I was good until you dragged me back into this freak show and put everyone here at risk. In an alternate opening, which the CGI was done on that opening. That opening was literally, it had to have been cut like from the final cut. It if you go out and watch it, maybe I'll throw some links to it in our
Cool.
in the secret show notes. But um if you go back and watch that, it's done, and you see the Hulk, you see Bruce get dropped off in the Arctic. He goes out into the middle of nowhere in the Arctic where he knows no one else is going to get hurt if he does transform. And you see him cock a gun and then get turned into the Hulk, and the Hulk smashes the gun. Hulk smashes an ice shelf. As the shockwave of the ice shelf ripples, you see Captain America in the ice. And ultimately that was cut because they just didn't feel like, well, I think it was cut for a lot of reasons. I think that scene itself was probably cut because showing suicidality in a Marvel movie wasn't really where the MCU was at the time. And then also, I know that ultimately they didn't want to put Captain America. They didn't want to start Steve Rogers off in a scene like that. They didn't feel that was appropriate for Steve
So
Rogers.
I watched the same deleted scenes as you did, and I watched that opening scene over and over again. I've seen screen grabs. I don't know how anybody with normal vision could have spotted Captain America in the ice.
I agree. There's like, if they had wanted that to be a Captain America like cameo, they would have needed to like up the like saturation on his blue about 20,000% just to make him show up. Because yeah, it's like that's it's a blue shadow on the ice is what it looks like.
I could not even tell. Like it was not. But I thought that was. But I like the fact that they put that stuff in. They put in, like you said, the banner quote to Fury, even though he makes reference to it, like, and it didn't really show it. That was a nice little nod back to that deleted scene.
Yeah.
We get a little Tony Stark. We get a little connection to Iron Man 2 where he is called the consultant. Where Fury's like, oh no, man, we don't want you to be in the group. Like, you're kind of unstable. Like, we just want you as the consultant.
Yeah.
And so technically, because Hulk uses the name in the one shot where they refer to him as the consultant, suggests the connection to Iron Man 2, and this movie comes before Iron Man 2, which, I think you asked the question, are these out of order? Was the Hulk released in proper chronological order or not? And I think it was. I think that the one shot tried to fix that, and they just kind of like glossed over the Iron Man 2 part. But
yeah, and I mean, it is important to note that one shot was released on Thor's home release, which Thor comes after Iron Man 2. So in theory, like, as far as knowledge we find out, it makes sense, I guess. But yeah, it does, like, repeatedly watching this, and especially the cutscenes and stuff. I did pre-main show. I asked David, because David did all of his production stuff. I asked, hey, was this released out of order? And like you said, it just unfortunately was not.
It was not. Let's talk about. I saw your note. Let's talk about Martin Starr.
Oh man, oh boy. It's funny. So we talked about this a little bit. So a little bit of behind the scenes. We are still feeling out the edges of what's a spoiler, what's not. And so I do want to say that I stand firmly on the side that any connection to a future movie probably stays out of the main show. But we talked a lot about this Martin Starr cameo, or whatever you want to call it, casting. One, I'm a big comedy fan, and I like a lot of Seth Rogen stuff, and Martin Starr is like a constant piece of Seth Rogen's crew, so he shows up a lot. So I recognize his face very easily. And I remember it was probably the second, I think it was, so in the main show I watched this movie in 2018 as part of 300 movies I watched.
And I think it was when I watched this movie that time that I became convinced that Martin Starr played the same character in this as he plays later on down the road in the Spider-Man movies, Homecoming, Far From Home. I think he also showed up in No Way Home, if I remember right. He showed up briefly there too, as Mr. Harrington, the debate teacher,
Mhm.
which in 2018, when I had this theory, it was a harebrained fan theory. Now, what I discovered in researching for this episode that I was super excited to discover was that Kevin Feige canonized my idea. In a 2019 Ask Me Anything
I
on
can't remember what I saw. I
Reddit.
know which one you're talking about. I can't remember what it was, what the forum was, but yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
He Kevin Feige said they're the same person. It's the same character. The computer nerd in the Culver University computer lab is the same Mr. Harrington that goes on to be a debate coach and chaperone for a future Peter Parker.
So, which I love. I really enjoy that part. I like the fact that he just kind of, snapped his fingers and canonized something that what didn't have to be, but why not? What does it hurt? And I think it's kind of cool because it does help to bring in just a little tiny bit, little tie to the Sony Spider-Man stuff, which is kind of on its own, doing its own thing. I know that they collaborate with Marvel and they're not going to go down a road that Marvel doesn't want them to do, but it's not like the Avengers are appearing in a bunch of in the Sony movies. So to have a character from Culver University is kind of cool.
Yeah, and I will say we will watch those Spider-Man movies. I consider them part of the MCU. So we'll definitely watch them. They refer to events that happened in the MCU. They refer to the Battle of New York. They refer to Iron Man, all kinds of stuff. So I do intend to watch those as part of this podcast.
The speaking of Culver University, so again, a character in the movie in the sense that it is tied to a number of other movies. So Culver University is a Marvel college, school of kind of graduate research and so forth, where Bruce and Betty taught. We saw the reference to Rick Jones' student, Rick Jones being a character from the Hulk comic book, who was arguably the nexus behind the creation of the Hulk when he, basically Banner saved his life from a gamma ray explosion and got, imbued with the gamma rays and turns him into the Hulk. But other Culver University graduates include Dr. Jane Foster and Darcy Lewis. So,
oh, wow.
Whom we see in Thor. We see Darcy Lewis. We see Jane, obviously, in all the Thor movies. We see Darcy Lewis in the Thor movies and in WandaVision. Yep. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is super cool. The only other direct tie to an exact movie, right, is Thor Ragnarok, right? So we see there when Bruce is trying to transform in Thor Ragnarok, we see a callback to his fail to transform midair. Except instead of a street in Harlem, he is crashing into the Rainbow Bridge.
So funny.
Yeah. So good.
So let's think about this. Just off the top of our heads, the jumping out of a plane by someone who themselves cannot fly. So let's see if we can do this. We've got the Hulk.
Yep.
In this movie, Incredible Hulk, and in Thor. We've got I think, didn't Captain America jump out of a plane?
He did it. I want to say he did it a couple of times. I know for sure he did it in Avengers because Black Widow says to him, "You don't want to do that, Cap. These guys are basically gods," and he's like, "There's one god, ma'am, and he doesn't look like that." And then he jumps out.
Black Widow? In the Black Widow movie, I think?
Yep, I do believe she jumped off. Yeah, it wasn't a plane. It was,
not quite.
jumping jumping from aerial vehicles. Yeah,
Jumping from there jumping from something that is in the air without the ability to fly.
Iron Man.
Iron Man?
Yeah,
Jumps from a building, right?
Yep. Jumps from a building and has the suit catch up to him. Who else has done such a thing?
Those are the ones that popped to my mind right away.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So,
it's definitely a bit of a trope, I would say.
Yeah,
that.
I like it. I'm in for it every time. It's always like, oh my gosh, this person's going to die. And I'm like, now they're fine.
Superhero landing.
So let's talk about Stan Lee.
Okay.
AKA Stanley Lieber, AKA the dude who shows up in all these movies. So we saw him in 2003 Hulk. He was in a scene, actually, I think is the first time he's actually talking in a cameo, and he is walking out of a building next to Lou Ferrigno, who is, typecast as a big buff security guard. He is also, again, in this movie as the old dude who drinks the guarana soda and then is poisoned and gets sick. We don't know if he dies. It's kind of unclear. And we see him in literally every other Marvel film up until the point of his death. And then I don't think we've seen him since then.
Correct.
So we talked about it before or offline, the concept of the Watcher informant. And the theory, and again, I just literally discovered this just the other day, and so you probably know this better than I do, but like the Watcher informant is this character who supposedly travels the universe and then through time and reports on adventures to the Watchers. And so I guess he shows up in Captain America. He shows up in Iron Man. He shows, Iron Man, he is mistaken for Hugh Hefner, I think.
Yep.
If I remember correctly.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on like that little nugget Easter egg? And I should have said what has canonized this is that in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, there's a scene where his character is talking to the Watcher. And the Watchers, I'm sorry, and talks about all this, basically talk about the stuff he's seen. He's kind of being cut off and he wants to continue talking. Like it was kind of a throwaway appearance, but like, what are your thoughts on that theory?
Yeah, I've always loved the idea of the meta Stan Lee. And so I like that they brought it into the MCU and it makes sense here. And I think in that appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, he actually says something about I was at their wedding, referring to his cameo in Rise of the Silver Surfer. So it even crossed universes there, which is kind of fun. And we talked a little bit at the top of the show in the news segment about Big Hero 6. A lot of people don't remember that it's Marvel. One of the things that makes that that movie distinctly Marvel, aside from being based on a Marvel comic book, is that it has a Stan Lee cameo. Stan Lee actually plays the grandfather of one of the characters, who wears his underwear inside out, outside in, front and back. Yeah, it's a kid's movie. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's really fun to think of him as this being beyond the universe, right? And In the comics, they've done that a couple times where Stan Lee has shown up, or other writers too. One of my favorite runs of comics is Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, and at the very end of that, he goes and he kills the writer. Like they draw Deadpool killing the writer of the book, which just great, like great meta kind of thing. And so I'm always here for that kind of meta stuff, and I think it does pull it in, and it makes it funny for things like this where he had to appear in 2 Hulk movies with different Hulks. Essentially, he's appeared alongside every incarnation of the Hulk, right? If you 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon it through the various cameos in the various movies, he has appeared next to every Hulk.
Interesting. What are your just? I know we talked a lot about the making of the scene by scene breakdown, but do you have any in like kind of how this connects to larger MCU? But anything we didn't touch on in the main show in terms of like now having watched it 3 times in a row? Do you like your feelings towards it? Like, what are anything we didn't really cover in the main show?
Don't watch this 3 times in a row.
Oh my God.
I think we covered that in the main show, but don't do it.
Dude, it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. This morning when I reluctantly this last showing, I started 3 different times and I'd get like 20 minutes in. It's like, I can't.
Yeah.
It's like getting on the treadmill. Like, oh man, I got to take a break. I can't. I'm not going to run this all the way through.
And we should be clear. That's not to say it's a bad movie. Like the first time watching it was good, right?
Yeah,
the first rewatch, and probably for any of you out there, this is not us dissuading you from watching it. I encourage everybody who listens to this show to watch the movies we're watching. I think that will enrich your experience for sure. And I definitely think this is one where, you know, we joke about we saved you from watching it, but I do think if you haven't watched it, or if you haven't watched it in a while, go back and rewatch it.
It's a short,
it's super worth it.
It's a short watch. It is. You're not watching, Gone with the Wind. You're not watching some 3.5 hour, what's his name who does the DC stuff?
Chris Nolan.
No. What's the guy? The guy did Superman and Batman stuff late. He had like the 4-hour cut of his Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's not that. This movie, the complaints I have about this movie, like, okay, let's get into like how we could have maybe fixed it. One of the things I found really jarring was the editing. Yeah. We jump around from scene to scene, sometimes for like a minute. Like we'll be in Brazil and it'll cut to Blonsky talking to Ross for like a minute, and then it cuts back. And I found that to be on rewatch, that stuff bugged me a lot more.
That's fair. Yeah. And it definitely, man, again, I'm going to figure out how to get the cut scene or the deleted scenes compilation that we watched into our show notes, because I would encourage everybody to go watch that. It's about 30 minutes of deleted scenes. Mm-hmm. And when you watch that, you see all these scenes that would have made this movie better by and large. Yeah. I don't know if they were cut. I agree with the theory that they were cut to action it up, to make it more actiony and more focused on action. But I can't help but think as I'm watching that like there's the scene where Blonsky gets called into what they seem to be trying to pass off as the like storage room where they have the APCs and all this stuff, where he has his conversation with Ross, but it's actually him getting called into an office to debrief the mission, and they just they cut out that entire debrief in the movie. And that's just one example, right? That's one super specific example, but that's, like you were saying, the editing is so jarring and so disjointed. It really just seems like what they were trying to do was make a vehicle to get to the action scenes.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think I think that action spells profits and sells.
Yeah.
I really want to see this movie. The a discussion that Nicolas Cage's. I'm sorry, Nicolas Cage. Jesus Christ, I'm already casting him. Edward Norton's character has in the movie where he's talking to Stanley, the owner of the Italian restaurant, was actually really interesting. Like that filled in a nice little gap for me, and was just kind of completely cut out. And so, yeah, I think I think that the movie also signals this is the second in the MCU universe, if you will, the second movie, the second installment, and they're still trying to figure out like the right balance of things, like the balance between movie star, the balance between writer, the balance between director and showrunner. And it gets sideways in this movie and then gets turned up a notch in Iron Man 2. And spoiler alert, like Iron Man 2 is ranked very low for me. And I'm gonna be curious how high it ranks in comparison to this movie after I watch it for the third time. I might put the Incredible Hulk above it.
Wow.
But remains to be seen.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, yeah.
Can I ask you two character questions before we get into the fun stuff?
Okay.
Betty. You called Liv Tyler the worst actress on the planet.
Yes, exactly. So much for our guest appearance with her.
Do you think it's weird? And I agree, the chemistry is it's really just off and seems very stilted. You don't know why she is still so in love with him and hasn't moved on, but whatever. But do you find it odd that Betty is nowhere in MCU, not anywhere else? She isn't referenced. He has quickly moved on to Natasha. Like, I found that to be weird because she was so important.
Yeah, it is super weird. And I was trying to remember maybe because there's a conversation, I want to say it was in Avengers, where all the guys are like, "Oh, our girlfriends aren't here," basically. Like, Natalie Portman didn't want to do MCU movies anymore, so Jane Foster wasn't showing up, and Gwyneth Paltrow was arguing with Marvel, so Pepper wasn't showing up, and I could have sworn, thinking about that Betty got mentioned then. We'll have to look out for that as we watch those movies. But outside of that, her next appearance ends up being What If. And honestly, What If has the strongest direct pulls from this, right? So
Yep.
In one of the What If episodes, Hank Pym is basically going crazy and killing off all the Avengers, and you actually see the Culver University fight. That's where Hank Pym kills Bruce Banner, is that Culver University fight, and you do see Betty in that. She plays a part in that, and I think she might show up in another What If episode. But yeah, it is strange. I don't know if it's because Liv Tyler, fell out of love with the MCU. I don't know if it's her bad acting, and so, the producers decided not to move forward with her. It is interesting because her dad, right, Ross, is a major player in the MCU. A little bit disappointing that we haven't got to see the Red Hulk yet. We haven't got to see Ross Hulk out into the Red Hulk. And we will never get to see, that version of Ross, since the actor has passed.
Right.
The rumor right now is that it's going to end up being Harrison Ford, which interesting. But
Okay.
yeah,
On the Ross front, and rest in peace, William Hurt, great actor.
absolutely. Thank you.
I always found it weird. Like, you've got a daughter, you don't even reference her like in any of the movies, but whatever. What do you think? And I'm thinking specifically, Ryan, him and his portrayal in all the movies that he appears in, so not just this one. Do you like William Hurt as Ross? Because I watched this one, and if this is your first experience, it is tough to come back from this one. Just I understand he's supposed to be an unlikable military person, but he's not even. I don't even like the way he played this character. But like, what do you think about William Hurt in the role?
I don't mind him. I think I I I think he plays the hard ass military really well. He plays that like there is no soft spot to him, and he is wholly centered on his goal, which is to dissect the Hulk and weaponize it. Um, I think it does it is a different character than who he ends up being in like Civil War. So again, a little bit of behind the scenes for the listener. Um, David and I actually, in testing for this podcast, deciding how we wanted to do it, our test episode was on Civil War. So we kind of we watched that one just before we recorded any of these. It's lost to history, so don't ask us to release it.
Been
But
burned. It's gone. It's with the Ark and the Covenant in the warehouse at the end. Indiana
exactly,
Jones.
exactly. But I do think it's more cunning at that point. I think he's not like right in this movie. He's not necessarily cunning. He's just brute force. I like force of will, I guess, is the best way
Okay.
I can describe it. He's solely focused on one thing, and he's gonna head for it no matter what. Which
Okay.
I think is probably less of a great representation than like the slightly more cunning version that we get later on down the road.
Right. He fades. He is still present in the movies. He does not have. I guess it's not as big a deal in the later movies. He doesn't have quite a predominant role. He later becomes Secretary of State. I think in one version of the movies of the comic books, he becomes president. There is nothing between him and Liv Tyler which suggests that they'd even met before getting on screen. Like,
yeah.
at least with like, I understand with Liv Tyler and with Edward Norton, like they'd had lots of conversations offset about their characters, and so at least, even though while there wasn't huge chemistry, at least they didn't seem uncomfortable around each other.
Right.
Anyway, all right. So, speaking of Ross, we're going to cut to one of our favorite segments, which is rank or describe facial hair, Marvel facial. Some folks in the Marvel Cinematic Universe have magnificent beards, mustaches. Others have what look to be kind of like glued on things. We will, in the next episode, spoiler, going to get to best wig. It's going to be a tough fight between Whiplash and Scarlett Johansson playing the Scarlet Witch. I mean, sorry, cut that.
Black Widow.
Black Widow, thank you. And Scarlet Witch has a pretty good wig as well. But in this one, we have General Ross, William Hurt, big. I don't even know what you would call that mustache. Does that have a particular name or style?
So not in the competitive bearding world. For those who didn't catch the first episode, I was once upon a time a competitive bearder. So I know I guess I know my stuff. In the competitive bearding world, mustaches kind of really only break down into natural and then styled, and there's lots of different versions of styled mustaches. But a natural mustache only really breaks down into one thing, which is a natural mustache. And that's what William Hurt's is in this. It would be considered a natural mustache. And some people call that a cop stash because he kind of looks like a police officer, stereotypic police officer's mustache. Or the some people call it a comb. because
Okay. Yeah.
it just looks like a comb sitting on his lip. But I mean it looked good. It looked full. It was definitely like the grandpa was a cop one day, so he or once upon a time, so he's got a white mustache these days, type of mustache. That's for sure.
Do you think it was real?
I think throughout the movie it was likely real. I think he may have shaved it off before the
Like promo
after
photos?
or the like after credit, not after
Okay.
credit scene, because it's a little crooked at that point. So unless he's really bad at grooming it, yeah, it's fake.
Best. Okay. Last facial hair question. Then we'll move on to our most important question. Uh, Better goatee, Robert Downey Jr. at the end of this movie, or Edward Norton as we see him at his very last scene in the movie.
I liked Edward Norton's better, and man, Tony Stark's is growing. Like Robert Downey Jr.'s is growing weird wings. Like because in this, at the end of this movie, he's got like an outline of the bottom of his chin, but it doesn't connect up to his sideburns, and then like a goatee around his mouth, and oh man, it's wild. Edward Norton's at least connects everywhere, and looks a little bit more like normal,
Fair
I
enough.
guess.
All right. Most important question. And this was how I was able to get through this film was to ask myself the question, gun to my head, I have to cast Nicolas Cage in this movie. And there were certain points in time during the movie where I would just envision him in literally every role just to get through the scene. I envisioned him as the Brazilian bully. I envisioned him as all the main character. I envisioned him as Betty. Like,
Dad.
you can't. I'm never to refer to your father again, or something stupid. But what? So if you have to cast him in the movie, what role do you give him?
Oh man. Oh, Nick Cage. Where do we place him? I would place him. You know what? I'm going to give him a starring role in this movie. I'm going to give him Bruce Banner. Man, could you imagine him hulking out? Could you imagine Nick Cage and his ridiculous overacting in the transformation scenes?
Oh, it'd be fantastic. Especially the scene when he's in the lab with Stearns. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh man, he'd be chewing it up.
Or the "you won't like me when I'm hungry," like the two fight scenes with the Brazilian bullies. Those would be hilarious.
I think I'm gonna go on a limb and say this is one Marvel movie where I would have enjoyed it much more had he been given a role, and it would not have mattered which one he was given. I think, don't get me wrong, I think Edward Norton is actually very credible and serviceable. Bruce Banner, Incredible Hulk. I think that obviously Nicolas Cage would send that in a much different direction. The one I landed on was Blonsky, just because Blonsky was over the top, it was the intensity. Like Nicolas Cage brings a super duper intensity and crazy eyes, and I am there for that. I think that would have been fun.
That's fair. All right, man. Well, anything else super spoilery that you want to get out before we get on out of here?
No, I think we hit on it. Are you looking for the next movie?
I am. As we've established, big Iron Man fan. I actually posted to kind of tell people we were recording today. I posted a picture of my studio, and so anybody who looks at that will notice how much of a Iron Man fan I am. Literally, Iron Man mouse mat, Iron Man chair. So anytime we get to watch an Iron Man movie, I'm stoked. I do at the back of my mind know that it is the worst of the named Iron Man movies, in my estimation. So a little bit bumming on that, but you know what? I haven't rewatched that one in forever. I haven't watched Iron Man 2 because I watched, like I mentioned last time, I watch Iron Man 3 every winter for Christmas time. And I watch Iron Man 1 all the time. It's kind of one of those, like, I'm hungover, I need an easy movie to watch, so watch it type of movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't watched Iron Man 2 in a while, so I'm excited to revisit it. How
Yeah.
about you?
I same thing. I'm looking forward to rewatching it just to see how it connects to the first ones, how it connects to everything after it. I'm kind of curious at some of the onset dysfunction is kind of a strong word, but just the onset little mini battles that occurred. Mickey Rourke just hamming it up. Great. Can't wait to see that again. Awful Russian accent. Oh man, can't wait for that part.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Well, why don't we go ahead and get out of here? We'll let these people go at an hour of content here. But thank you all again for listening. Truly, 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 truly. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Like I say, if you're hearing this, it means that you are supporting us monetarily, which means a lot to us for sure. And I know it means a lot to the rest of the studio as well. So make sure, if you haven't already, make sure you give our other shows on the network a listen. I know that they will all appreciate the shine. But other than that, we will tell you to take it easy, and we'll see you next month. Later, y'all.